There's a lot of background noise. It's, oh no. They can hear us. Let's see. All right, we good. We Gucci.
Okay.
All right, Amala.
All right.
Welcome to. I think I'm gonna be calling it Stark Reality.
Stark
You might need to scoot in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. And I picked you. I was like, I should have Amala on Stark Reality. One, because I know you. I know of you through my friends who talk about you.
Okay. Really?
But I don't know you very well. And I was like, aren't you trying to be like a social activist or something?
Yeah.
I was like, that would make an interesting podcast.
Yeah.
So why not just do that? And so that's why you're the fourth guest now
Thank you very
on
much.
Stark Reality.
I'm honored.
You did make the cut before Miguel. Sorry, Miguel, if you're listening to this.
Wait, Miguel.
What can you say? Miguel Castillo.
Oh.
But he'll be alright. I'm doing one with him Sunday. So, Stark Reality. We can really talk about anything.
Okay.
I'll probably open up the floor with. You going somewhere? Oh, okay.
Oh, I can't see.
There you go. Let's wait for that to be over. That's my dad. My friends love him for some reason. It's kind of weird. They call him Tan. This is his company. I wear his shirts every day.
Oh, what does he do?
Field Line. He works for a company who measures electricity, but like at a very small percentage. Not a very small percentage, really accurately.
Oh, okay.
And he only deals to like the military and then like really big like Fortune 500 companies and stuff like that, because it's a really super small market for really specific things that like the common marketplace doesn't need. And it's like a company of like 40 people, but he likes his job a lot because he gets to like, because with such a small market they have to travel internationally to like meet with customers, so he has a pretty cool gig. But anyway, Amala, what do you want to do in the future when you get older?
Well, this is a big question. I think my main goal is to focus into politics and social justice issues and civil rights. So I just want to go through my life assisting people in gaining their rights, basically.
Nice. So Marion said that you want to run some sort of... Wait, that's not... Okay, Marion said you wanted to run some sort of non-for-profit?
Yeah, that would be
like an
the
organization?
Dream. Yeah.
Do you like have plans to like go to college to do any of this?
I want to go to college and major in political science, gender studies, all that stuff, just to get my background in that. And then I would start off as an organizer at a nonprofit, which is basically somebody who puts actions together and works with the community to get them together to back a certain campaign or works in voter registration. So that would be the start, and I build my way up from there, and then eventually, hopefully, start my own nonprofit.
Do you know what kind of like nonprofit you want to?
I've always tried to pick a certain topic that I want to focus on, whether it's prison reform or voter registration or voting rights, but I can never choose, so I think it's going to be a non-for-profit that focuses on all different types of campaigns.
Okay. Well, I think running a non-for-profit is such a noble thing to do and like something really hard to do. And the thing is like my sister wants to work with a non-for-profit when she gets older too. She wants to work with human trafficking, like non-for-profit with like prostitution and stuff. And I know like you have to be like so committed to stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you actually have to like live out what you think. You can't just like, people get so caught up in speaking about politics, but then they don't ever actually like apply it to anywhere in their life.
Yeah.
And so like running a non-for-profit, you really have to be about what you say. Yeah. And you really have to like live to your word. And yeah, I just think like that's a really interesting sort of, I don't know, market's not the good term, but like a job to have.
Thanks.
Now, was your mom is a social reformer, right?
Yeah, she works for Organized Florida in Orlando, and they are one of those non-for-profits that works on a bunch of different campaigns. They've worked with Black Lives Matter, Fight for 15. They're now working on a campaign about wage theft. And basically what she does is she is the executive director, so she works on grant writing. That's her job, holistically, is just to write grants for the company and get them, organization, and get them as much money as possible.
Okay. What's Fight for 15?
Fight for 15 is fighting for the $15 minimum wage.
Oh, okay. Interesting. You're like, would you consider yourself any political, like, faction or party?
Democrat, yeah.
Democrat? Are you part of the Democrat thing at school?
Yeah, I'm the co-founder of the Democrats Club at school.
Oh, okay. Who's the president of that?
Sam.
And you're the co-founder?
Co-founder, programs director. Yeah.
What do you do there?
Basically, I'm in charge of setting up what we do within the club and different programs that we want to be involved in.
I think what I don't like about the school system is they don't support clubs that are controversial, which I feel like they need to do more on both sides too. And I think I would like just a club where we could have discussion and talk about like harsh topics. But that's like the school system just can't support that, and that really sucks, you know?
And we've already had backlash. I had set up for us to have a worker from Planned Parenthood come and talk to our organization or our club, and that got shut down because we're not allowed to do anything quote unquote controversial. So that's a kind of umbrella term where I'm kind of in this gray area of not knowing what we can and can't do.
That's one of the biggest stalwarts to any sort of movement is ambiguous legislation, where you can sort of define it and it can be argued in like multiple different directions to where you don't ever set clear standards, and then eventually you can just shut down everything because your standards aren't set to be like clear. This podcast, I don't know, we're just gonna like kind of. This podcast actually started from Mr. Snyder's personal learning project with Mr. Jeffron because I was trying to get a good grade easily, and did I say Mr. Jeffron? I meant Mr. Snyder. Yeah, anyway, I like what Mr. Snyder's class does because we have people who all disagree on things come in and talk, and I feel like that's like discussion like that is really important in between young teens, and that's why I actually started this, is because I think it'd be a great way to broadcast like my ideas and the ideas of people I used as high school, but then I'm also kind of nervous because I have to put myself out there. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like young people need to be more invested in politics and then finding what sort of ideology they fit closest to, and then sort of like making individual reforms to what they think.
Yeah, and that was kind of the basis around our clubs, because Audrey Wicken started the Republican Club, and Sam and I thought, well, why not start a Democratic Club and encourage fluidity between, because a lot of teenagers want to be interested in politics and they have issues that they're concerned with, but they don't know what club or what affiliation that they want to be a part of. So we encourage them to like check out both clubs and see what they like.
Although in reality, what sucks so much is stuff like that doesn't happen unless you have two very caring people or group of people who actually want to make changes to what they think and change how they view things and change how other people view things, and try people who can sort of meet a consensus, like come in the middle and sort of make changes in what they think in general. Exactly. But the thing that happens is high schoolers, I feel like, you know, I always say this, I feel like our lizard brains are a little bit bigger than a lot of adults, because I don't know, a lot of guys at high school just go savage mode, and then they base every single decision off their midbrain, how they're feeling, how their hormones drive them, and so they go a little bit crazy and they go ham. And so I feel like more so, I'm not trying to roast you, Audrey, but like more so I feel like I see guys coming into Republican views just as like a way to like shut other people down. And then you also have that on the other side with like Democratic, or like I'm thinking more college right now, because I've been on like college campuses before and I see how it plays out. But like you have people on the right who use that as an excuse to just like yell at people, and the same thing like with people on the left. And because of two extreme groups, even though it's a very small percentage, like no one in the middle will take each other seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a big issue right now.
Yeah, I talked to Jackson Salmon, and he said he went to one of the Republican meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and he felt uncomfortable because a lot of the times they were bashing liberals during it, and he felt that he agrees with them on a fiscal level, with
Mm-hmm.
business, such as that, stuff around that, and then in terms of gay marriage, he supports gay marriage, and he thinks it doesn't affect them, and he was
Mm-hmm.
sensing that it was a little too hostile of an environment for him.
Mm. Anytime, yeah, that's kind of a weird thing is when you start critiquing other people's ideas more than your own,
Mm-hmm.
because you always need to take a look inside yourself
Mm-hmm.
and make sure what you believe is sound and based on facts, because people don't like to reform ideas in their brain, and they connect it to their ego, like their own personal self, and they think the ideas I have now is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the case. You are not what you think currently, because that might change down the line.
Exactly.
And you want to be like a growing organism
Mm-hmm.
and constantly like reforming how you think.
And I think high school is so much about high school, college, the rest of your life is so much about finding out who you are. And when you can't find out who you are, you don't know, you kind of project that onto other people and try to tear down what they think. And I think that's really like destructive on your own part.
Yeah. Just a bunch of lost people
Mm-hmm.
who are kind of roasting other people for what they believe
exactly.
in. I wish high school was more conducive to people finding out what they think.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people inherit what their parents think, and so many people do the opposite and go against what their parents think, just kind of as like, I don't know. I don't know what that is, but people do that. And I found myself thinking what my parents thought, and then thinking the exact opposite of what my parents thought, but in reality, like now it's sort of nearing like somewhere more the middle.
Yeah.
And in the past year, my political philosophies and like how I view life in general has changed like so much. So as you mature, it's really important to kind of get the ball rolling and thinking like, what do I want to do later in life? How do I approach certain situations? And like kind of creating a template for how you think, not necessarily a template for what you think.
Yeah. And I think school is so non-conducive to that because they're always like, oh, what are you doing? Like, what's your next step? What are you going to do in the future? Raise your hand if you have the right answer, but not if you have the wrong answer. And people are so scared of answering and having it not be what other people think or having it be the wrong answer that they just don't try anymore.
Yeah, you don't like putting yourself out there can be so scary, and saying controversial opinions can be super scary too. And the thing with school is the way Common Core is set up now, we can't really encourage creativity easily to sort of. I used to hate writing essays before Snyder's class. I used to hate writing essays. I was bad at it. I thought creative writing was really lame. I was just going to do something with math. And then Mr. Snyder was making us write essays every 2 weeks. And so my first essay I wrote, it was super trash. And then like the second essay I wrote was probably still really trash. And same with the third one. But by the fourth one, I was like getting a little bit better. And I realized like I kind of like this. And I realized an essay was a way for me to plan out and see what I think. Because I think it's the same with almost every high schooler, but we have all these jumbled up thoughts in our head. We create straw men in our own head of our argument and of other people's argument. Actually, we create an Iron Man instead of a straw man out of our head. We create this is such a rock solid idea, and the other idea is dumb. But until you start like writing it out, like I read the letter to the terrorist thing. Yeah. And I thought that was a really good essay because in the beginning, I was like, I don't know. I had to do a little bit of research into the whole Palestine thing, and it gets really messy. But at the beginning, you start to think, this person is a lower level of human being for thinking he can commit an act of violence against a random stranger who he doesn't even know. And then towards like the middle of the essay, you kind of start sympathizing with the guy because it's how he was raised and that's all he knows. And then you see him also sympathizing with the dude he committed violence to because they put a human face to it. Yeah. And so I feel like that represents a lot of what we do now. And that's what my whole thing is about, is putting human faces to humans, because that's what we should be doing. But it's so easy to just characterize people as just like a robot that lives next to us.
Exactly. We start to dehumanize other people who we don't understand or who we don't agree with. And I think that's a big problem with what we have in our country and other countries all over the world, and that's why we're having so much tension and so much conflict these days, is because we're dehumanizing people and we're not having conversations. And I think one of the main things I want to do in my career, apart from the nonprofit, is create a platform for conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think that's so important with every single issue we have. Most definitely.
I, like, the thing that I struggle with right now is thinking about what I want to do in the future. Because I'm probably going to keep going as a hobby, especially in college, where I'll be able to have a network of people who think crazy things or moderate things, and, like, I don't know, bring on one day a communist, and then one day bring on someone who is, like, equally as far right as, like, communism. And I think that would just be, like, a great space to do that. But I want to get it started now, because it's something I've always wanted to do. Next year's going to be my senior year. But it's definitely kind of hard in high school when people, like, don't really know what they think, you know?
Yeah.
And they're all, like, kind of like, I don't know, I'll be swayed by the wind either way.
Exactly.
I don't know. But that's fine. I'd rather have that than a bunch of complete ideologues who, like, I only think this, I'm only ever going to think this. And I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, there's this fear of being able to change your mind. So people are always stuck, and they're like, oh, well, I said this in public, or I said this in front of one person, I can't go back now. Like, what am I supposed to do? I have to stay in this mindset.
You know what word is one of my pet peeves is? Flip-floppers. They go, oh, he's a flip-flopper, she's a flip-flopper. They don't know what they believe. But that's a term used by people who are idiots and don't understand that changing your opinion is I think we should welcome it more than we do.
Yes.
Now, what people should do is should be honest what they think about before. Like, this is why I thought this, and acknowledge that they believe that, not be like, oh, I never believed that, but acknowledging how you used to think versus how you think now is really important. Because I used to be a super conservative person, like socially conservative and economically conservative, and now I view myself as more socially liberal and then fiscally conservative. And I'm sure in the future it's going to change. And I found myself, like, almost once a year, my opinion on a pretty big issue changes because, like, new facts come to light or just a different way of thinking about it, you know?
Yeah. And
so I don't get how people can sort of cement their views at this age.
I know. Yeah. Like, when I was a kid, I went to church. I tried Catholic churches. I tried Baptist churches. I tried Unitarian churches. My sister would, like, pray at night with her little prayer pillow. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm just supposed to believe this. Like, this is just how life's supposed to be. And people would ask me, oh, yeah, like, I believe in God. Yeah. And then as I got older, I started just thinking more about it and researching and actually learning. And I was like, oh, wow, like, you're allowed to be an atheist. Like, that's a thing that you can be. And that's what I identify as now. So I think it's so important to be able to make changes in your mindset. So important.
Are your parents Christian?
My mother is an atheist. My father, who really knows?
Okay.
Yeah, they got divorced when I was 6, so I don't talk to him that often, so I don't really know that much.
True. Religion is something that makes people super uncomfortable when you talk about it. And they're like, ugh, let's just not talk about this in public. Which I guess I kind of understand. Like, sometimes people use religion as, like, just a way to cope. And I feel like that's fine. And even, let's say you don't, like, believe in a God at all. Even just taking, like, parts of the Bible as just sort of, what's the term?
Like guidelines?
Kind of like guidelines, but a bigger, I don't know how you say this. It's an English term, but like a bigger picture, an archetype. Okay. Taking the Bible as an archetype, and you see like the struggle between good and evil, but then obviously it's not scientific fact, you know. And some people take it like there are people who I know who think like the Earth is 6,000 years old, you know, or around that time period, like 10,000. Yeah. And I think that's crazy, folks. And but I still think they're fine people. And we can still even demonize people who are like religious when they're still finding themselves, you know?
Exactly. Like, I'm an atheist, I'm a Democrat, and Audrey is extremely religious and extremely Republican, and we're the best of friends, and we get along great, and I think it's because we have conversations about it all the time. We talk about what she thinks, and I talk about what I think.
I'm in the same situation as you. One of my best friends, Tunde. He says things that I just cannot stand, but I still love that man. And it's if you don't have a best friend that you love, first of all, you're whack, and you need to get one because they're the best social support. But like all of my friends who I care deeply about and like care deeply about on me, we disagree like on a lot of things, and they're the ones that will sometimes piss me off the most. Where I'm just like, oh, I just want to shake you, like come on. But I don't know. People need to kind of understand that concept of caring and showing empathy like towards another human being.
Like love and caring for another person goes so far beyond political views and everything like that. Yeah. And sometimes you'll find yourself thinking like, how could I possibly be friends with somebody who believes this? But then you just think about like their personality and like times you have together, and it completely surpasses that. So.
And at times it will be frustrating. But if you dehumanize people, like one thing, I saw a picture the other day, and it was a picture of Hitler sitting in a crowd with a bunch of other people at this like Nazi pride parade or something. It's pretty crazy. And this woman came down, and she was like showing her support for Hitler, so she gave him a kiss on the cheek, and Hitler was smiling and just like laughing and like having a good time. And it kind of struck me because he was like, it showed like the real version as a person, as one who was a baby, who was raised up and like hated his father and never got to do what he wanted to do. And you kind of see that people can be pushed to these insane and like disgusting places when they are able to dehumanize people. Like one of the most heartbreaking photos I've ever seen, it was of this dude, I don't know, it was like somewhere in Rwanda back in like the 1900s. It was in black and white, and it was a really grainy photo, so I think it was like 1918 something back in like the spheres of when the spheres of influence were still big. And it was a Belgium, Netherlands, one of those countries colony. And it was this father who was sitting on a porch and just head in hands, just like looking down. And he was just like the 1,000-yard stare. And these slave masters, they worked on a rubber plantation. And if the slave didn't meet the quota, they would cut off their daughter's limbs. And so it wasn't bloody, it wasn't gory, and it was unfocused. But you just see this guy like looking hopeless, staring at like a cut off hand and like a cut off foot. And I was like, Jesus. Yeah. Like when you are able to take another human being and turn them into not a human being, you can start to do things like that.
Exactly.
And it just gets really dangerous.
And I think that's what I think scares people a lot about terrorism, and why there is absolutely no empathy, because you don't see that person as human anymore once they've done something like that. And that's a very twisted cycle and a twisted mindset to be in when somebody does something like that. So you no longer see them as human, so you retaliate, and they retaliate, and it's just back and forth, and then where does it end?
One, like, let's say a person from a country terrorizes and then we retaliate with force, like that's like punishing a group of people for one man's like efforts is like a horrible thing.
It is.
And I think what we like to do, because I think humans are naturally tribal, and I think it was just like a means of survival. Like back when we were hunting and gathering, it was like a useful tool to say, are you from my tribe? No. You're from the other tribe? Okay, well, sorry, but dog, you're gonna have to die, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Our tribe's trying to survive, and our genes are better, sir. So tribal like affiliations are something that were very useful in like the olden days, but not now so much. But we still have brains like wired to put people into tribes, and like you can only know details or like the names of like 300 people or something like that. And so we got to start categorizing somewhere. But if you don't kind of check yourself in everything you do and take a step back and say, how am I looking at people? Because one thing I do not like about the political climate right now is we sort of have a tendency to group everyone in together. And we group people by race, by class and like by gender.
Yes.
And then we sort of attribute something to all of those people. You know what I'm saying? And so like the things that annoy me the most are when like the thing that is pisses me off so much is like, let's say you have you ever heard the term Uncle Tom when people are describing like a black people? Like it's another black person.
Yeah, like heard it in passing. Yeah.
Yeah, like nothing like that pisses me off more. So I've never heard of something more racist than thinking because of someone's skin color they will think the same as you. You know what I'm saying? And like I know people who've been called, oh, like, you're an Uncle Tom for believing that, and you just go, what? Like, what did you just say? Like, what the heck are you talking about? You think because he's black he's gonna have the same mindset as you?
Exactly.
Like, what are you, one person now? Like, I don't know.
It's like oh, I said this to my one black friend, so what does it matter? Like when people say that to me, I don't. Or when people who make racist comments say, oh, but I have a black friend, he's basically my brother, and that makes it okay for it justifies you doing whatever you do to anybody of the same race, which just dumbfounds me that people think that. I just don't get it.
Like, the thing to me is, so my father is the exact opposite way than that. My father will say things like he won't. My father's not racist, guys, but my father will say like inflammatory things, and like when he talks like about welfare, and then my father acts really tough, but then we had this girl that lived in our house for like a year named Lovely, and she was from Haiti, and she was like in a really bad situation, and she needed a home to stay in, and even though my dad talks a lot of crap, and he's always like super inflammatory and like what he says, he's still the nicest guy ever, and so he does the exact opposite. And I'm just like, he confuses me the most because he's so generous and so kind, and took this Haitian girl he didn't even know and then adopted her into our family, and like now her husband is my brother-in-law, and her niece or her like daughter is my niece. Like, but he's like, he doesn't say what he doesn't do what he says, but in a good way. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I've never like seen sort of a dynamic like that where my dad says like crazy things sometimes that I disagree with, but I'll like say I disagree with that, and we'll have political discussions sometimes, but I'll never like be mean to him because I know I don't think that's actually what he thinks.
Yeah, like when it comes down to it, he's gonna do the right thing.
He's actually a nice person.
And I think it's because you never understand fully what you're saying until you come across somebody who's affected by it, or you come across somebody who's experienced it, or you experience it yourself. So that's when you reach like the bottom line of what you actually think, is when you come to the experience, and you have to like put your mindset to work.
Yeah, that's true. I think I'm very lucky because I've had my life has been, I've had a lot of experiences, and I think very like good ones. So for example, when my brothers grew up with my dad, they're my half brothers, so same dad, different wife. When my brothers grew up with them, they grew up super poor. When my dad went into the military, and one of my brothers was born on base in Japan, and they all grew up like dirt poor. And then my dad, when they were older, he gotten his associate's degree, and then he became an engineer and started working. So I grew up like middle class. Like I grew up in this house. Yeah. And seeing how my brothers think about like success and influence and money, and seeing how I think about it and like what my future goals are, has kind of given me a different perspective. Yeah. Because they grew up really poor, and because of it, now they're just starting to get their feet on the ground, and they're just starting to make good money, and they're just now starting to be able to like do good for their family. And like my experiences with that and with Lovely have like all culminated in this really weird, you know.
So what's your view on money in terms of your future, and like what you want to achieve in terms of money?
So I hear people at school say all the time, they're like, I'm going to go and I'm going to get this degree because it pays well. Or I'm going to be a doctor, do 8 years of medical school, and then make a lot of money. And we were driving by like this really rich part of Eustis, and I was seeing these huge houses with empty spaces. And I don't know why, but that's just not something like I've ever wanted. And like money, like I like having things. Like I love my motorcycle. It's really fun to drive. Not saying I don't like things, but I don't hold the same value as I do to like ideas. So what I want to do with my future is definitely not going to be only money oriented. If I don't
Yeah.
like what I'm doing, I'm not going to like drain part of my life just for money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going into this social justice field, which is definitely not gonna like bring in bank for
Mm-hmm.
you, which I don't value that as much as I value meeting people, talking about their issues, hearing their stories, and knowing that there's something you can do to like help
Mm-hmm.
them, and making that your goal in life. I think is so much more valuable than going and getting your doctorates in engineering and doing something that you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. My sister
Mm-hmm.
she's in college right now,
Mm-hmm.
and she changed her major in her junior year. She's gonna be an engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and then now she's going into like social service, not social services, but like social program.
Yeah.
And she's in this very like pretty good social program up at UNF now. Like 40 people only get in every year, and she got in, so she's like super excited.
Yeah.
But again, it's the same thing of like not gonna make a lot of money, but it's something that she just cares about so much.
Like, it's such passion is such a driving factor, and I think that's one of the things that I find like most endearing about people in general is when you get them talking about something they're passionate about, and they just can't stop talking about it, and they go into like this childlike mindset where they just know everything about it, and I think that's like so fascinating. And that's where you see people's true personality.
If you aren't passionate about what you're doing, or at least caring a little bit, like I always think of it as you have 24 hours each day. You wake up, you got 24 hours each day. And if you spend 9 hours doing what you hate so you can have money to live out like the rest of the like 6-7 hours of your waking days, that seems like a bad plan to me. I don't know.
Exactly.
To some people, they're like, hey, I want to make a couple $100,000 a year. It's just not something I want to do.
And doing what you hate, it ages you. So you're thinking, oh wow, I'm putting away all this money, but later on I'll have time and I'm just gonna go do whatever I want and do what I was passionate about beforehand. But you're lessening your time by doing stuff that you hate. It's just not helpful.
You do got to make a living. And so that's what like I've always been into expressing myself, but I'm really bad at art. And I wish I was better at art, but I feel like doing this podcast is a great way for me to just talk about things and sort of like vent my, not issues, but like vent my frustrations or vent my feelings or like things I find cool or things that I'm passionate about. And so this is kind of what that is, but probably not going to be able to make a living off this. So I'm going to have to find something, but I think I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I find it interesting in a lot of things. I don't know.
There's always something you can do. I feel like another issue that we have with our school system and with just the American mindset in general is being stuck with this basic set of careers, and you're supposed to like go through that and pick one out that you think suits you. So we have these doctors, lawyers, teachers, writers, and people don't know that there are like subsets of that. So people are always like, oh, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor. Well, what type of doctor? What type of lawyer? And they can never tell you because that's all they've heard is just that basic label.
Yeah. And I was gonna say something, but I totally forgot. Should have remembered it. There's like some wacky jobs out there that are really awesome that no one knows about. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know what I was gonna say. I'm trying to remember, but it's whatever. Okay. I remember what I was gonna say. What I hate about our school system the most, and especially with college, is that kids are going into debt for something they don't necessarily want to do or something that's not very useful to them. Like they go into insane amounts of debts to become doctors, and then they're like, I'll pay it off later. And student debt is the worst kind of debt because you can't declare bankruptcy on it ever. Like that follows with you for your whole life, and that is something that I'm just not about to mess with, you know?
Yeah, and that's another part of not encouraging people to change their minds, because you go through college and you're encouraged to keep the major that you chose when you stepped in. When you step foot in college and you choose your major, like that's what they want you to stick with. And each time you change it, oh, that's another $40,000 that you're gonna have to pay for that education. And the expense of college is insane in this country.
And then if you make people, and then if you like change your major, people are gonna look at you like you're a loser.
Yes.
They're like, oh, well, you couldn't stick with like engineering. Like, what the heck? Come on.
People do that now as a junior in high school when you don't know what you want to do. People are like, oh, well, you better figure that out next year. which it's mind-boggling that people think that you should choose that.
I think it's just because of like adults were raised in a way different time where like college was cheaper and the job market was smaller, and so it was like, dude, just kind of pick something.
Yeah.
Like, just pick something.
Yeah.
But it's like, nah, dude, come on.
And I think adults don't understand how depressing school can be for students. And they're like, oh, it's just school. It's just high school. It's super easy. It was easy when I did it. You should be able to do it too. Why are you breaking down every night? Why are you saying that you have depression? It's just school. You're overreacting. And it's so different. Like, it blows my mind that kids will choose to end their lives because of schooling.
Yeah.
Like, that is crazy to me.
Like, in this country, and it gets worse in other countries too. Where you're like, what? Like, in East Asia, it's so crazy. Like, in Japan. But I was talking to my mom a pretty long time ago. That was such a lame way to start a story. But I was talking to my mom a pretty long time ago. But I was talking to my mom a while ago. It was like a few months ago, maybe more than that. But she was like, dude, like, high school, your high schooling is way harder than when I was in high school. And people just, like, don't, like, when I see elementary kids nowadays, they have, like, 3 hours of homework, I'm like, what are you doing to these kids?
Yeah.
You're trying to create people who just, like, submit and do what they're told and don't know how to think rationally or think critically, which is something we should definitely be trying to get people to do. And education is the basis for all of this, you know?
It is.
Like, I feel like I'm very lucky because I'm naturally curious and I want to learn more. And so I want to learn the process behind things. I want to know about history. You know, I want to learn, like, in math class, like, I want to learn. But some people just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And it's because it's taught in a poor way. When people should know that things are actually really interesting. Like, history, when you get down to it, it's like a really cool form of entertainment. And it's like a beautiful movie. And things go crazy and you can learn so much from it. But kids have to learn Common Core standard things to learn on the test. And so they get super bored with stuff.
Exactly.
Like, this is trash.
Like when teachers say, well, I'm here to make sure you pass this test at the end of the year. That... oh my goodness, I don't think I could ever hear something more annoying come from a teacher's mouth than that. And that just irks me every time I hear it.
It does seem like high school has become a place literally meant to pass tests.
It is.
Like, in my classes. It's just like, I think Snyder does a great job. Jeffrey does a good job. And Smithson has been doing a good job, you know? They do okay they do good at sort of creating a space to actually learn rather than just passing a test. But even then, they can only do that so much because they still have to get us to pass the freaking test, you know?
There's so many things that they are being forced to cover so that we can be prepared for an exam. And I find it so crazy that we're learning all this information for some randomized test that, depending on what they choose to put on there, can make or break you whether you know the information or not.
Like my human geo, my essays were just such a lob because I knew what they were talking about, but like other people just forgot that specific information. So it's kind of just luck of the draw. Like, to be honest, like, it's just, do you remember it? Do you not? Because you can't be expected to know the whole course in reality. You know, so they're like, let's just pick a few things, put it on the test, throw it up there. Students pass, some don't, you know?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, kids have test taking anxiety, and they don't get enough sleep before something happens, family member dies. Like, there's a ton of variables. And to be honest, I don't have a proposed solution. I don't know what the answer is. But what I think we can do better as a school system is administrators should be open to students dissenting with what they had to tell them and students questioning, because people questioning is where you get answers. And that's really important. And whenever someone questions you, that's where you grow too. Because either you can cement what you think and be like, this is why you're wrong, or be like, why did I used to think that?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. And when the FSA testing first came out, and that was the major issue with the field testing being such a failure, and they still put it through the school system anyways, it was me, Audrey, Bianca, and this other girl named Harley. We said, no, we're not taking it. So we sat in the testing room, and all you have to do if you want to opt out of a test is just submit it blank and say, hey, I'm done, I want to leave now. Such retaliation from administration, teachers, and even students who've been so brainwashed into thinking that, oh, how could you ever not take a standardized test? It was amazing.
What wasn't that the FSA?
Yeah,
or,
the FSA essay test, the writing
weren't
test.
we like doing like like it didn't really even matter in ninth
Yeah.
grade? I remember hearing that about that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know who Bianca was. I didn't know who you were.
Uh-huh.
I didn't, but I was really, really dumb in ninth grade.
Uh-huh.
And I was just I was one of those kids where I was like, come on, just spend an hour and just write. You know, I literally remember thinking that.
Yeah.
Like, those guys are pretty lame.
Mm-hmm.
Just take the freaking test.
And we got so much opposition, but when you looked at the numbers of the field testing of this test and how many people failed, and we had kids who were coming out and going to their school boards crying, bawling their eyes out, talking about how they were so good and so proficient when they were in the class, but when they got to the test, everything just leaves their mind. They start having panic attacks and that they can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we just decided that was enough, and we were not going to take it. And all the rest of the year after that, we would get tests from teachers or like quizzes in random classes, and you would just hear students like, oh, you want to opt out of this too? And oh my goodness, it was so irritating.
People are funny, man.
I know.
I'm not gonna lie.
I'm just gonna be like, wow, okay, you're gonna understand this later. You'll understand this down the road.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting what I was gonna say. This almost never happened to me. All right, what were we talking about? Let's see. Standardized tests. Roasting people.
Yes.
Oh, I kind of get split with this because, what school tells you should be is you should either be really involved or really smart or like really good at sports. That's really simplified, but you know what I'm saying. And so people like look up to the people that take 7 AP classes and they're like, wow, I wish I was as smart as them. But to me, like, a lot of times those kids are just really book smart, and then you talk to them and they can't like hold an opinion or they can't like argue with anyone.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not gonna name names here, but I know a couple people where I'm just like, you are really book smart and you have great grades, but dog, you know nothing about the real world.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. Like, we get caught in these like situations where people can tell you everything about calculus and trigonometry, but when you talk about just common sense things or just the basic ways in which you should treat somebody, that's where it gets lost and you get this disconnect. So I think it's very important to be well-rounded, and I wish that we had classes that taught people, or just optional classes about anything really, like race, gender, like the future in terms of how our economy works and everything like that. And even when we do, it's half a year.
Yeah, true. That is true. Economics and government should both be their own separate courses.
Yes.
But I feel like it's also our responsibility to keep up on things because it's so accessible. And I always, like, part of me wants to be a really, like, get your stuff together, and then the other part of me wants to be, like, all nice. And I guess it's kind of like with anything, there has to be an even balance between like justice and enforcing the rules and then mercy and showing like sometimes people just aren't responsible and like aren't doing what they need to be doing. And I have people in my AP classes who are complaining about like getting low grades, but then they spend a ton of time partying, or they go to bed like super late and they're on social media they tweet like once every like 10 minutes. Yeah. It's like, I don't know if you're really allocating your time properly.
Yes.
But then there are also people who like are taking too many AP classes because they were told that this is what you gotta do to get into a good college, and then their life sucks. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
And you'll find that AP students, after being so focused on their education for so many years, make horrible decisions in their outside life and outside education, whether it's with drugs, alcohol, partying, just not generally being a nice person because they've been so focused on education and grades that they don't even notice social cues, or they don't even try to have conversations with people. So
yeah, I've always tried to create like a relatively balanced person. Like, I'm talking about me here. I always try to like be like a relatively balanced person in what I do, like social life, school, and like you said a second ago, where really smart people go to like top schools. Like, my sister knows someone who went to an Ivy League school and immediately started doing hard drugs. Like, went from nothing to hard drugs. And he said everyone there is so socially awkward, and like he's the lower end. Like, he was top in high school, and now he's like at the bottom of the social rung and of the academic rung, and so his life was just like swirling with I hate how my life is right now. Why did I go to the school? I paid so much money to be here, and they started doing like cocaine, and so like things get pretty serious, and just you need to find a balance in everything you do and create like an informed human being, and kind of work on yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's so important to know so much more than just one thing. And I find a lot of students complain about classes being like, oh, when am I ever going to use this in my life? When am I ever going to do this? I know what career I want to go into. You should just give me classes on that, and that's it. Yeah. But I find that when you have people when you only know about one thing in your life, where is there room for a conversation or anything? Whether you guys are talking about the math problems in your textbook or talking about the career you want to go into, it's important for you to know about different things.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. And I totally agree with you on that, because people say, I already know what I want to do to get into college. I shouldn't be in this English class. And every time I hear them talking, I'm like, but what if you change in midway through college and you don't know how to write a good essay? You know what I'm saying? Like, people need to understand that even if school teaches you nothing, at least it teaches you how to manage your time if you use it as an effective tool. And people just don't take advantage of the school system that we have now.
Exactly. And most of all, when people say, I don't know why I have to take English, that is the I can get if you would say, I don't get why I have to take AP Calculus. I don't want to be an engineer. I don't want to be a scientist, blah, 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 blah. But English, I don't care if you're not writing essays for the rest of your life. You have to read on your day-by-day. I would hope that you would find enjoyment in reading at some point, and it's important to be proficient in that and have a well-spoken, eloquent conversation with other people.
And know how to sort of not necessarily argue, but hold a conversation well, and think about their political ideology and think about yours, and kind of play around with it in your head and see what you're thinking. What I think plagues high schoolers nowadays is, one, they create fake problems that don't matter, like with relationships, and I'm kind of into psychology a little bit on the base level. I want to be a psychologist, but people tend to put themselves in bad situations and use that as leverage as to why they're not succeeding. So a great example that I hear all the time is people are like, oh, I went to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning last night. What were you doing? I was on my phone. I was like, okay, so maybe you should have gotten some sleep, and that's kind of your fault. Sometimes it's doing homework, sometimes, but a lot of times it's just poor management of time. And so people need to learn how to create, how to become an adult. And I feel like high school isn't doing that. We're not both showing enough. We're not punishing people enough. I take that back. We're not punishing people for the right things, and not necessarily punishment as in detentions, but maybe kind of tightening down. And I see teachers giving people free A's, but then we're also not showing enough mercy. Sometimes you need to give that student an A, or let them at least do this essay over again, or stuff like that.
Yeah, you shouldn't punish people who try with their grades. You should punish people for not trying at all.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And I think this sounds so cliche, but I think in Smithson's room he has this poster that says, "Do not make excuses, make improvements." And I'm so aware of that in my day-to-day. If I don't do an assignment and I go to the teacher, I'm not going to say, oh, I didn't do it, but because I had this, I had that, I'm always just I didn't do it, man. I'm sorry. If you want to give me points for it, I will do it. But if you don't, that's fine. I accept it. I didn't do it.
Sometimes you just drop the ball. You know? Sometimes. Now maybe you need to learn how to stop. Don't do it over and over, and don't abuse that. But sometimes you just forget. Sometimes you just you play video games for 2 hours and you shouldn't have. Yeah. You know, sometimes you do dumb stuff, and this is a time when it doesn't have huge impacts in life. You know, and so teachers need to sometimes relax, and then sometimes not. Yeah. It's a good a teacher should be a good judge of they shouldn't. I think creating this is my policy, no late work, or I think doing stuff like that is just really dumb.
Yeah, it's very deconstructive for your students. And I think another issue that I have is attendance, and the policies that they put on attendance dumbfound me, because I don't get it, because there are certain situations where you just can't be at school every single day. It's just, you can't do it. And there are some kids who are taking care of their families or like working to support their families. And there's absolutely no leeway for that. But if you show up every day, no matter what, if you're an F student and you show up every single day, you're rewarded.
Yeah, true.
So I don't get it. Like, if you're getting a referral once a month, but you show up to school every single day, you get a certificate at the end of the year.
True.
And I don't get it.
It gets so tricky when you're dealing with 300 million people in
Yeah.
like a landmass, and that's why solving issues is really hard, and that's why people need to be more involved at the local level. And do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
No.
So I found it. First of all, I found him out of controversy because people were like really like bashing on him because he works at a college. He's a professor at a college, and he works in Canada. And in Canada, there's a law that they're putting in place called Bill C-16, and it's making people use it's not in effect yet, but what it essentially will do is it'll make you'll be compelled to use someone's pronouns. So if they say I'm a she, I'm a he, I'm a they, then they, whatever, like you have to use that. And so he was, oh shoot, I almost did the same thing. So he was very against that, and that drew a lot of controversy. But he has a lot of lectures, and he's a psychologist, so I went back and like watched some of the stuff that he does, and I found him very interesting. And what he suggests is he has this program called self-authoring for free, and what you do is you spend like 10 minutes writing about if you are really responsible and you take the best parts of yourself, and every single day, like, you work hard, you are focused, and you are driven, and you take 10 minutes and you like write about that, and you kind of see what you could do and you acknowledge what you could accomplish, and then you take 10 minutes and you analyze the worst parts of yourself and where that could take you, and you write, like, some people write more than 10 minutes, some people write less, but you just sort of like, I think just writing stuff out like that, and you can see, let's see, where can I go in the future? Like, what's my true potential, and what's my true potential on the negative side? Like, where can I bring myself? Like, people need to understand the worst parts about themselves. Yeah. If you don't know your vices and what's gonna bring you down, that's you shouldn't be blind to that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's like, I was at this comedy show once, and this comedian got up and he said, if you don't have at least 2 vices, you're either denying your true self or you're crazy.
Yeah,
and it's definitely true.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
There's no way that anybody on this earth is a perfect person, and I think introspection and looking inside yourself is so important to just be a better person and be better with other people.
Like I have this supreme ability to be super hypocritical and get so annoyed at what other people do. Like, there's one kid who's chewing with his mouth open at school, and I just wanted to take that kid and choke slam him against the wall and be like, why would you do this to me? Like, why are you in our society? And it's like, come on, dude. Like, you haven't chewed with your mouth open. I don't know. I have this like tendency to get so annoyed and deeply angry, and it burns in my chest. And I'm just like, ugh. And that's been something since I was little. And then I also have this extreme ability, like, I can be really driven and like be responsible, but then I take one day and I'm like, I can do that tomorrow during power hour. Yeah. I can, what's this grade really gonna be? And I get super lazy with that, And like, if you don't understand what can bring you down, those things are probably gonna eventually bring you down. Yeah.
I'm a horrible procrastinator a lot of the time, especially when it's something so simple, like the simplest things where I'm like, I could do this in 10 minutes easy. I know. I'm like, but it's gonna be the 10 minutes at the end of the weekend.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
The easier something is, the easier it is to forget. Yes. Where you're just like, I'm not even gonna write that down. Yes. Like, I'll find some time to do that.
And the deadline's approaching, and you think of it 2 minutes before it's due, and you're like, oh, well, shoot. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know, managing that. And it becomes easier, like, once you have some momentum.
I think I would say another one of my issues is I can get very, very taken aback by things that people say. Like, if you say something that's racist or homophobic, I'm immediately going to want to have a conversation with you about it. And that's a lot of problems for me because I will confront you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, like, I don't have an issue with it, but I'll want to have a conversation and be like, hey, so why'd you say that?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work out
True.
well, ever.
Sometimes we do let our emotions get the best. But
Mhm.
also, that's not, like, necessarily a bad thing to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just when the other person won't acknowledge it or won't talk about it, I think about it the entire day.
You're like, this person,
Yeah.
this dude.
How could you ever say that?
Like, he'll say something mean, but he doesn't have the balls to talk. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
exactly. Like when that happened in Smithson's class.
Oh, yeah,
and,
uh-huh.
yeah. He just laughed and walked away, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
yep, not gonna have a conversation. Great.
That's a lame situation.
Mhm.
Like, that's the thing that. Okay, so I disagree with like stuff people say. I disagree a lot with what people are saying about, typically about like gender, about race, about anything. But I respect your ability to do what you want. You have agency. You can do what you want, and as long as it's not infringing on my rights, I could give two about what you're doing.
Exactly.
So I'm all for any legislation that opens up the opportunity for you to do anything that doesn't infringe on someone else's rights. So when other people start calling out people, like insulting them for what they choose, or like saying you can't do what you want to do, even though it has no effect on them.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, take a step back.
Yeah.
Like, does it really matter? Like, I think pretty much anything that doesn't step on someone else's boundaries shouldn't be illegal. Like, I think you shouldn't get arrested for doing hard drugs if it's not affecting someone else. You don't have a kid, you want to do hard drugs, you want to ruin your life, that's all up to you. And then weed. Why is weed illegal? It makes zero sense to me. I don't think my parents probably disagree with this. You heard it first, Dad. I don't think weed should be illegal.
Me neither.
One, it has medical benefits, but it's still a Schedule 1 drug. And it's not, unless you're like blowing it in your infant's face, it's not like you're hurting anybody with it.
Exactly. And it's been just proven time after time after time to solve, not necessarily solve, but to assist with so many issues, both medically, just mentally, physically, everything. And why is there such a problem with it?
I think we're going to look back on this time period like we do with prohibition. Like, I'm sure the people who are against weed now would have been the same people who be like, alcohol is the devil's vice. Like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of it comes from big corporations who are just trying to make money, you know? Like, the most disgusting thing I think about our country is private prisons who are funding to keep weed illegal and have lobbyists. And, like, I don't know how people can't see how disgusting that is, because they are lobbying for weed to be legal so they can arrest people and make money off other people's time in prison with like government subsidies.
And then people look at prison and there's this huge stigma, like an unbelievable stigma about prison, that it's full of rapists and murderers and pedophiles, and that anybody who's in there should have the worst treatment that is humanly possible. So that's why you have things like prisoners getting beaten up, and nobody cares at all.
You know what's something that no one talks about? Prison rape. Like 300,000 cases a year. No one talks about it.
Exactly, because I don't care. You got in prison, so you deserve it. And then solitary confinement, which has been proven to be absolutely disgusting. One of the, if not the worst punishment you could do or inflict on a human being. And people just accept it, turn a blind eye, and move on.
You know, I was thinking about when I think about solitary confinement. It's a worse punishment to be by yourself than to be in a group of criminals. If you think about that, like this is more applied to high risk. No, not high risk, but like prisons where it's only filled with murderers, rapists, gangbangers, people who've like shot 20 people. You know.
Yeah.
So it's a worse sentence to live by yourself in like the dark and have one window and go outside once a day than to live with a group of people who murder, people who have raped before, you know? Like, that's crazy, like, if you think about that truly.
Yes.
You know? And the thing is we make more arrests for weed alone, not even talking about other drugs, make more arrests for weed alone than all violent crimes combined.
Yeah. And it's insane because you have people who were just doing this to relax themselves, or they had a medical issue, or they were selling it to get by for their families.
Yeah.
And you're now in prison for 15 years, and you will not see your children grow up, or you'll never see your wife again, and stuff like that. And it's what they go through. Just the food alone that you get in prison. Like, people don't understand how physically and psychologically you can mess somebody up with just food. Like, it's insane to see. Like, people who will do social experiments where they go into a prison for a week just to experience it, and they come out a completely different person with a completely different understanding.
And like drugs are one of the only, not the only, but one of the only cases where we have mandatory minimums. Like, with other laws, they'll go, all right, dude, your first DUI, you have no criminal record, you have a family, like, we'll put a breathalyzer in your car, you have to breathe into that to start it, you know, and maybe you get your license suspended for 6 months. But with weed, they're like, nope, 5 years in prison. Like, it's crazy to me.
And like, let's look at statistics on how many people alcohol has killed and how many people weed has killed, and then compare and see how many people are in prison for both. And it's insane. I don't get what the mindset is to have scientific evidence of this drug being harmless and then doing this to people.
It comes from a lot of stigmas and like a lot of old belief. Like, it was the same thing with alcohol. Of like, this is horrible, only horrible people drink this, and you shouldn't drink that. And then big corporations like Rockefeller, who was an oil mogul, was supporting this because he didn't want ethanol, you know how we put ethanol in our gas? Didn't want ethanol, which is alcohol, being pumped into our gas. So it's like, let's make this widespread illegal. And it was the same thing with weed, because when we outlawed weed, we also outlawed hemp, which is a great tool. And so it happened around the time where we invented the decorticator, which is comparable to the cotton gin. So like, it would process hemp. And so newspaper companies are starting to use hemp. And so the bigger newspaper company who was invested in paper, can't remember the name right now, I'm sorry. But the bigger newspaper company is like, let's call it marijuana. Marijuana came from the 1930s, and they marketed marijuana as this thing the dirty Mexicans were doing. And so it's called marijuana, like with an H, marijuana.
Wow, I did not know that.
And so they called it marijuana, and they're like, look what these Mexican people are smoking. And that's simplified how weed became illegal.
That is crazy.
A lot of things are rooted in like people just don't understand the history. And it was, you think like Republicans who are all about the beginning of our country and the founding of the Constitution would be for it because it was totally legal and George Washington grew it. So, dog, if you're a Republican, better start thumping about weed. Federal, I don't understand it. People should, aren't you for individual rights? But they just buy into lies of brain damage and
and that's when you brought up people always thinking back to the founding fathers. I think there's a lot of problems when people revert back to the past and use that as the reasoning why we should do something now, when people are I'll use this as an example. I got asked to do girls state, and I went in and I met the lady who was going to be doing the interviews and everything like that, and her criteria was, when you go there, you're going to have to wear what we ask you to wear, you have to wake up at a certain time, you have to make sure you're there for the full 10 days, and she goes, and one more thing. Some people tend to have problems with this. I don't know. You probably shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, you have to swear on the Bible and salute the flag. And I was like, okay, well, that's my goodbye. I'm not gonna swear on something that I don't fully believe in at all. And I was in math class and I was telling Emily, about that situation. And Mr. Campbell goes, so you're not going to do it because they asked you to swear on the Bible? And I was like, yep, that is what I said. Yeah. And then he's like, well, I don't think you should have a problem with that. And I asked him why. And he said, well, that's what our country is founded on. It's founded on Christianity. So I think that you should not have a problem with that. And
let's go, dog.
Yeah, the logic.
Under God was added in the 40s or the 50s. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel. Even though, for me, it's not something I had a problem with, but still, I understand the thought process behind, it's the idea, behind, if I don't believe in this, I shouldn't be forced to. Yeah. But they're private organizations, so the thing that sucks is, they can do that. Yeah. But,
which is why, I was like, yeah, it's fine, I accept the fact that you hold that as a regulation for the people who
Mm-hmm.
are in your program, but I'm just not gonna choose to do it, and that seemed to be fine. So
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah, there is a lot of like misconceptions about the founding of our country, and yeah, like I understand our founding fathers did some crazy things, but I love the idea of, first of all, like the idea of the rugged individual of like you're gonna get crap done by yourself, and like you should like. To me, I want to be independent when I get older. Like I'm getting a job. Like my parents paid for this. My parents paid for that. My parents paid for my motorcycle, but I want to get a job. I'm getting a job this summer because I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like some sort of weird guilt, but I just don't like having things like paid for me. And I don't like having people like take me out to dinner. Or, like if I don't know you, I'm like, dude, you don't have to pay for me.
Yeah.
And I just have like this weird feeling towards that. And so like our founding fathers had really great ideas, but like they're like some of them are messed up people, you know?
Yeah. And I've had people tell me, oh, it doesn't matter because my parents are going to pay for it. Like, I don't need to get a job because my parents are going to pay for this and they're going to help me with that. But with that mindset, I don't see how people don't find joy in making their own money and buying their own things. Like, being able to walk into a store and saying, hey, like, I'm buying this with my own money today. Like, I feel like that's such a great feeling.
Yeah. Like, I'm getting a job this summer and I'm going to get, because this is a condenser mic. So it picks up like background noise. So I go in Audacity and I do noise reduction in the background, so it like takes a lot of it out. But what I want to do is I want to get those radio swing arms and get a desk in here, so like you have like a mic come down like right here.
Yes.
And so I'm like, look, like this is a great start, and just like the audio quality isn't the best, but it's a start, and so I'm thankful for that. But I want to work on my own, and like I just don't get people who are feel entitled to their parents' money.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And even if you don't necessarily feel entitled to it and it's just there and you just accept that, like you just go on with your life and you think that that's fine, I guess. I mean, if it's there, utilize it, I guess. True. But I think people should feel the need to do things on their own at some point, hopefully.
The thing that, like, people need to learn to be more grateful, and if you are born... That was weird. Oh, it was sliding. If you are born into a situation, I feel like I should properly, like, I don't feel like I have the ability to be lazy because I was put in such a great situation and I have this, like, thirst for knowledge and I love to learn. So I can't afford to be lazy and, like, out of college, like, I want to get a job. I want to live on my own. I'm going to be independent. Like, I'm not even going to think about living with my parents, you know?
Yeah.
And also, people need to learn to be more grateful, because one thing that I hear so much, and it is my pet peeve, is when you think I'm gonna, I think okay, you might. Okay. My pet peeve is when there's a rich person, and then they have something super nice, and then there's a middle class person, like anywhere in there, who has a car to drive to school every day. Their parents pay for gas. Their parents pay for their food. They live in a pretty good house in the suburbs. Yep. And then this rich person has this nice car, and they go, "Oh, I wish." I'm like, "What are you talking about that you wish?" Yeah. You know? I'm like, "What do you mean you wish? You're in a good situation." And that shows to me, when someone says that, it shows to me that they're very immature and they don't analyze the situation they're in.
Yes. Like, my family does not have the money for me to have a car, and that's fine. Like, I make my way. I borrow my grandmother's car. I don't even technically need one. And I hear kids who are getting a car or already have one, and they're like, "Oh, my parents are taking forever to get me my car. Or my parents are taking forever for this." Be grateful that you're getting one. And then we have this huge thing in our generation of not being grateful, and this whole kill myself.
Yeah, like, it's disgusting.
Ooh.
Yeah.
The amount of times I heard that in a day, it's crazy.
Yeah, like, of course you can make jokes. Jokes are funny, but you need to, people need to understand that the situation they're in is, like, pretty dang good.
Yeah.
And, like, I can understand, like, when, like, my friend Tunde, he grew up pretty poor, and so he would be like, I wish I could have a car, just so, like, I understood that because he wants to be able to, like, drive places and hang out with his friends. But, like, if you are middle class, probably shouldn't be saying I wish, because you are in a good place.
Yes.
Especially compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Like, people do not understand what it is to live, like, in most places in the world. Like, when people, like, I always find it funny when people talk about the apocalypse, because the apocalypse is already happening in places like Africa,
Yeah.
where it's a war-torn country. Your country's in the middle of a civil war. You're this little 8-year-old who doesn't know what's going on, and these men come in and shoot your mother, shoot your father. You know, like you should just be grateful. We won the lottery. Most of us won the lottery by being born in America.
Yeah, we did. And you have kids who are complaining, oh, my mom's not letting me go to this party. Like, I'm so pissed off. Oh, okay, well, you're not living in bomb-ridden Syria, so...
Every time I find myself doing that, I'm like, come on, dude. Like, it's probably like, definitely my biggest pet peeve.
Yeah. And you don't want to belittle someone's problems, but when it's something so irrelevant and insignificant, and then you go on your phone and which is obviously something you should already be grateful for. You have a phone, you have a computer in your hand, and you see the news and you see all these horrible things happening, and then the next 5 minutes you're just listening to your friend complain to you about irrelevant. So irrelevant in the grand scheme of just life in general. It can be irritating.
Yeah. They're typically all look the same, and they're typically all 16-year-old blonde girls. I'm playing. But they're like you'll hear discussions in the hallway. You're like, oh my gosh, my mom said this to me, and my dad said this to me. It's like just grow up, please.
Yeah, and that's where conversating with people comes in, because I've had friends who are just happen to be privileged white girls, and Nija, who is Black, and I'm mixed, so we'll talk about issues like racism that affect our lives, or like how the prison system is disproportionately filled with colored people. And I've had a friend say to me, well, what about white racism? What about when people call me a white girl because I drink Starbucks? And it's where that disconnect where you can never understand like what we're talking about unless we tell you what we're talking about. And people didn't know that colored people like go through procedures when being pulled over, or like are taught from a young age like this is how you should handle things, and they don't know anything about that.
This is where I feel lucky, because I grew up with lovely Haitian like Black, and so she'd be with us. Like we were in public one time, and so we were like running our things through the checkout line at the grocery store, and like Lovely grabbed gum, like put it on, like nothing weird, and the cashier lady was like, put that back, and Lovely was just like, what? And we're like, what? She's like, put that back. And we're like, no, like she's with us, you know. And like we've heard some nasty things people have said, and so I've had this like extra set of eyes to look through, and like with my friend Tunde too, like we've had conversations, and like even if I disagree with him, I can still like be with him, and he's someone I can talk to, and we should like encourage dialogue.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Like I remember the situation when I was a little kid, and my brother was, I think, going to the YMCA, and he would go there to work out, and he was in his early teens, I think, and there was this older white guy, and my brother went in the locker room, saw him there, left the locker room, and then later on, the guy calls the police and says that someone stole his phone, and immediately, pointing to my brother, he's the one who stole my phone, like, he did it. So my mom comes, the police has to write a report, so she goes home, it's finished, it's done. The police come to our house, and my brother is just bawling his eyes out like he didn't do anything, and my mom just like starts crying, and she's a white woman, so she obviously doesn't like fully understand, but she knew what she was getting into when, you know, she had us. And she ran out into the yard, and the policeman was there, and she was just crying, and she's like, you know why you're here, and the policeman just nodded. Like, he knew exactly. It was just, like, that silent look where you know exactly, like, what happened. Yeah. And then after that, like...
Yes. Like, stuff like my friend Tune's dating a white girl, and they'll get, like, or I don't know if he's dating her anymore, but used to be. And they'll get, like, comments, like, about, like, people disapproving of, like, interracial relationships. And it's like, I'm very optimistic, because it's not a huge number of people, but it's the vocal minority of people who like feel they're able to like yell stuff out and like be like really rude. Yeah. But at the same time, it's hurt people who are just super immature and like don't understand, you know. And they like sometimes it's just about having experiences in life, and so sometimes like you need to just like call people out. Just be like, why would you say something like that? Like, why would you hurt someone?
Yeah. You know? And that's how it was with my family, because when my mother married my father, my grandfather went ballistic. he was like, no N-word is gonna be dating my daughter, no N-word is marrying my daughter, like if you have kids, like no, like I'm gonna take them from you, blah 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 blah. And I see him every single day of my life, and that's always in the back of my mind. Yeah, that's always what I'm gonna remember. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize like how much words matter.
Yeah, there's definitely there's like especially when you're young, man. Like the stuff that just gets imprinted on you when you're like really young.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to brag with like what I'm saying, but I just feel like I love my dad. I love my mom. I used to get so pissed off at my dad and so pissed off at my mom, and they would like make me angry every day. And my dad's dad, my grandpa, died when my dad was like 13, and he's a child of 10. And he grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota. So he had this kind of crazy mother who had 10 kids to raise by herself in a farm. And so like how my dad expresses love has always been like kind of weird, you know? So like I've never had like the one time, like the moment of affection that really sticks out to me is when I passed my driving test and my dad gave me a high five. Like that was a moment where I was like, man, he's so proud of me.
That's great.
But like I had to learn how to know how my dad is like expressing like how my dad always like shows that he cares about me is when we spend quality time together. We have a ping pong table in our house. We play ping pong all the time together, and like I have this sort of kind of weird sense of like what affection is, because he would always like he would always kind of roast me, you know? I don't know. It was kind of like a weird dynamic growing up, but like you just learn to love it. Yeah. And so growing up, that's like also kind of changed my view on people. And so you have to understand how growing up has affected your life, and then be able to kind of like reprogram your brain to fit like how most people operate. You know
because like when somebody is coming around and they show you affection in a different way, you're like, oh, that's different. Like that's not what I've experienced before. And
then I started to realize that when I started insulting people didn't like it. I'm like, what the heck, dog?
I love you, man.
Yeah, like what? Like I would never hurt you if you weren't my friend. I guess I gravitate people who do the same things, like, because me and my friends are the same way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you are such an idiot, bro.
Your hairline is trash.
Like, you are the, like, I tell my friend Tune It all the time, because he has, like, awesome locks. I'm like, dude, you need to get your line redone. He's like, shut up, Jackson. I'm like, you need to get those things spun again. Like, they look pretty trash. And he's like, shut up. I'm like, dude, I wouldn't say it if I didn't love you.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I don't know. Like, we don't understand how being raised has, like, an impact on us.
Like that, yeah, that's very true.
So right now we're at about an hour and 20 minutes.
Really?
It goes by pretty quick. It was pretty slow in the beginning, but we eventually started talking.
Yes, for real.
Probably gonna wrap it up here.
Okay.
I can't make it go too long, because I gonna pay for a hosting site, and you have like a certain amount of storage every month.
That would be expensive.
Yeah.
But fun though. It was fun.
All right.
Yeah, I really like this.
This concludes the episode with Amala. She's pretty interesting. You know, you're okay.
Thanks.
But yep. All right. Bye.
Bye.